afternoon. I think it's just afternoon. I'm just going to give it a moment and see if anyone joins me live. It's 12 noon on Tuesday, the 16th of February. Hi Sylvia. So, welcome to a lunchtime live with Izzy Shashinsky, independent Stampin' Up demonstrator of Izzy's Crafty Bees. Just a quick lunchtime live today. It's going to be a two-part live for me today. I'm going to do this one now at lunchtime, and I'm going to come back on at 7 o'clock this evening, and I'm going to share with you a fantastic bundle that I'd hoped to actually share as a class, and I still will offer kits for anybody who wants to order the bundle. The reason I'm not doing a class in the post at the moment is we've been experiencing some difficulties with our UPS importing from our warehouse in Germany, which have all cleared up now, but I designed this class and wanted to initially share it during February in preparation for Mother's Day, which happens in March in the UK, and I've got another class planned for March which I'm still going to do. So things have just been thrown out slightly with those delays at the beginning of the year, which are now all getting evened out. Everything seems to be coming into the UK on time. I received follow-up orders which have arrived on time, so we're all good. But I'm still going to share these projects with you today, and like I say, I'm quite happy to put together kits for classes if you want to actually make the things that I'm going to demonstrate today. So because it's a lunchtime live, I'm going to get straight on with it. I'm going to say hi to Sylvia and hi to Mum, who are watching live at the moment, and hi to anyone else who joins me on catch up later on. So without further ado, let me adorn myself with spectacles so I can see what I'm doing and spin you round. Let's have you spinning. Bear with the wobbly bits, and let's just get you nice and straight. There we go. So as always, if you're joining me live, here's a reminder of where you can see me across all these social media platforms by searching at Izzy's Crafty Bees. I can't speak today. And you can also find me on Facebook. On YouTube, and a link to my YouTube channel is on my Facebook page. If you're placing an order with me at the moment, this is the host code to use if you're ordering direct from my online shop, izzyscraftybees.stampinup.net. You can also join my team, and if you join my team during the month of February, you get additional items in your starter kit. I'm not going to go into too much detail because this is a quick lunchtime live, so let's just pop that to one side. I'm actually going to share with you how I made these two really cute floral wreath note cards. And this is the bundle that I'm actually going to be demonstrating this lunchtime and this evening. It's called the Welcoming Window Bundle, and it comprises this stamp set, which I absolutely love. It's got lots of different elements, some really nice sentiments, but lots of different elements. But the real fun starts when you buy the matching dies, and the matching dies make these lovely windows. So this piece here in particular, I'm going to show you a card that I'm going to make this evening in a moment. This piece also embosses in this lovely wood grain and makes fantastic shutters for this window frame. But you'll also notice in the stamp set that there is this window and these shutters that you can actually stamp, and you can cut using these dies. So it's actually quite a nice double set in that you can either die cut the window frame and shutters and make a card something like this one, which I'm going to show you this evening. This is a diorama card, nice fancy fold. and I'm going to show you something really fun this evening that you can do once you've made this card. So here is a card I made using the die cut frame and shutters and these cute little brackets, hinge plates, but you can also stamp the window frame and stamp the shutters and cut them using the other dies. There's also dies to stamp a window ledge and die cut, and there is also a die, fabulous die that I used on here that you can hardly see, actually you can just see a bit of it, to make the window box, which also gets embossed with a wood grain effect. So it's a very extensive set of dies and matching stamp set. So that's what I'm going to be featuring today. But I wanted to show you a Stamperatus technique for which I've shared with you before with another stamp set that we had for Christmas. And when I saw this stamp set, I saw the two stamps that stamp foliage and their coordinating flower stamps, and I thought it would be fun to get a different technique, to use a different technique and get a different image and make some flower wreath note cards. So I'm going to share with you how I did that, and I'm going to actually use different colour ink. For these two I've used Bumblebee and Magenta Madness, which are two of the newest in colours, and I'm actually going to use Rococo Rose and Terracotta Tile, which are two in colours which will retire this year to make way for some more new ones. So without further ado, let's sit down. I'm going to take a seat, and in preparation I've actually pre-cut some pieces of card. So I've pre-cut my note card bases using thick white cardstock, and the measurements for these, so to end up with a 10 centimetre by 10 centimetre, let me try and give you that in inches as well. Apologies, I've just knocked my camera. So in inches that would be roughly a 4" by 4" card base. I've also cut two pieces, this is for each card, a piece of white 8 centimetres by 8 centimetres and a coloured layer to mat underneath, which is 8.5 centimetres by 8.5 centimetres, one in Rococo Rose and one in Terracotta Tile. And just to explain how I got my square card bases from a piece of A4, so I took my piece of A4, I'll just get a piece of A4 coloured card and just demonstrate this verbally rather than actually trimming. So I took my piece of A4 cardstock, and if we remember that this measures 21 centimetres across its width, I took a 1 centimetre strip from the longest side. I then rotated it and I cut two pieces at 10 centimetres. Now because A4 is not quite, I've just buried my ruler, 30 centimetres, you don't get exactly 3 cards of 10 centimetres. So I got 2 note cards of 10 centimetres, and then I got a set, the last piece was just shy of 10, but I will fold it and make it into a note card in any case. So therefore your frugal crafting. Now I've taken my Stamperatus and I am just going to use one of the plates for this card, and I've also taken a piece of the Stamperatus grid sheet and I'm using the centimetre side, and the first thing I did was to draw a thick black line at the halfway point straight across, so I've got a cross at halfway and halfway, and then I've drawn using a marker pen 3 different square sizes, one that's 6 centimetres by 6 centimetres, one that's 8 centimetres by 8 centimetres, and one that's 10 centimetres by 10 centimetres. So I've just gone out a centimetre from each one, which grows the square by 2 centimetres in total. And I'm going to use the 8 centimetre by 8 centimetre square and line up my cardstock, and I'm going to use one of the magnets across one corner. So I'm going to make sure to have that square inside that marked area, and it's a really useful thing to do if you've got the Stamperatus, is to actually order a pack of this grid sheet. It's actually got inches on the other side. Let me get the actual pack and show you. So it comes in a pack, and you've got centimetres on one side and inches on the other side, so depending on whether you work in metric or in imperial, there's something for you there. And it's a really useful pack to have, not only for when you're stamping to save your surface underneath, but also for this technique. Now I'm just going to back up and rewind a little bit and show you how I set up my Stamperatus. Because your Stamperatus does come with a printed and sealed grid already on the base, with an inches and metric and imperial rulers down each of the sides. But because I'm using a photopolymer stamp set, I'm also going to use the foam mat that comes with the Stamperatus when you buy it. And then, like I say, I'm going to add a sheet of that grid paper on top, and I'm going to take care to make sure that that grid is tight up against that top right hand corner, and I'm going to use one of the magnets to anchor my layer of cardstock to my grid sheet. So I'm just going to pop that there. The other thing that you can do to get to use this technique is actually to draw up your own grid, and you can draw it up with two lots of squares, one as a diamond and one as a square. Now I've chosen not to do the additional square because I found that using this cross at the halfway mark will allow me to line my card as I turn it, and that will become apparent once I get started stamping. So let's get started stamping, and I'm going to take one of the leaf stamps, and the first thing I'm going to do is actually position it across one of the corners with the stamp facing down and pick it up using my plate, and I'm just going to check where that lines up when I turn my paper, my cardstock, around once. I'm just going to double check, and that's actually going to be off the cardstock, so let's just reposition that. Let's just see if we can get this to work. So if I reposition that back in the square, that's going to be a little bit further in, so that's fine. So I now know that my circle is going to fit inside when I stamp it and I rotate my cardstock. I know that that's actually going to fit inside, so that's the first thing you need to do. So I'm going to start with it square, okay, and I'm going to use my favourite green ink because it's just a nice shade of green. It's just my favourite, Old Olive. And underneath I'm going to actually just position another ink pad, and that just means that my plate lays flat. And I'm just going to stand up and see if I've got any comments. I've got no comments, and I've got 6 viewers, so I'm hoping everything's okay. Sound's okay and vision's okay because you're all still there. So I'm going to ink up my stamp, and I'm going to stamp it straight down. Now I'm going to remove the magnet, just slide it, and I'm going to turn, and you could turn left or right, it doesn't matter so long as you just keep going. So I'm going to turn clockwise, and now I'm taking care to line up these points of my cardstock with that halfway cross mark. And again I'm going to just use my magnet, tap up with ink, and I'm going to keep doing the same all the way around. So turn it one turn clockwise, so now my cardstock is lined up with the square. And So whilst I'm going to continue doing this all the way around, I'm going to ask, how is everybody? Hope you're all keeping well and warm after the Arctic weekend that we've just experienced. Yesterday, what a change. I actually managed 3 hours in the garden. The sun came out in the afternoon and it was absolutely beautiful. I got all wrapped up after the weekend's freezing temperatures with my big gardening jacket, my neck warmer, my woolly hat, my gardening gloves, and I set off out into the front garden to tackle some dead flowers and Michaelmas daisies left over from last autumn and some weeds, and just to give the bulb space to come through. And after about 10 minutes I was throwing off clothes like, I don't know, hat came off, neck warmer came off, big jacket came off, sun was in my eyes so baseball cap went on, and I had an absolutely fabulous 3 hours or so, starting a battle that I know I'm going to lose with a very invasive plant, and I think it's called St. John's wort, and it's driving me nuts because it's taken over. And now you can see I've gone all the way round and I've got this beautiful pattern which reminds me of spirograph when I was little. And now I'm going to fill in with the matching flower. So the matching flower for this leaf is this one in the stamp set, this one here, so we can see this leaf and this flower match together. So I'm going to line that up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just take my plate out of the hinge and flip it round, and that's one of the unique things about the Stampin' Up! Stamperatus stamp positioning tool, is that we can remove the plates completely, and so therefore with 2 plates we actually get 4 stamping platform plates. I'm going to just take my time to roughly line this up. I say roughly because what I found as I stamped my other one, my original one, was they match up, but they don't need to be absolutely exact because you're going to stamp all the way around, so they can be roughly lined up. Now this is a 2-step stamp, and on the actual I don't know if we can see, let me stand up and see if we can see this. I flip that over. On the actual acetate that we get inside the stamp case, we get this image here, which is for the leaf, and we get this tiny little arrow here, and it will say 2A, and then for the flower we'll have a corresponding arrow and it says 2B. So you know first of all that that's 2 and 2, they match each other. And the little arrow, if you take note of that, if you're doing 2-step accurate stamping and you're using either a block or your Stamperatus, you can actually line up the arrow with the arrow so you know which direction your stamp actually needs to be. But I'm going to do this roughly, and I think that that's how it lines up, and I'm going to just grab that with my plate. And I'm going to do exactly the same technique. This time, I'm just going to close up my green ink. And this time, because Rococo Rose is hiding underneath there, I'm going to use terracotta tile for these flowers. And just take my time to make sure we're still lined up in this top corner. And I'll do that by just removing that very strong magnet and just making sure everything is nicely in position. Let's get some ink and we'll just stamp and move. And I'm going to go clockwise again, taking time to line up those points around that cross. just keep going all the way around once more. It's quite a quick technique once you've got everything lined up and positioned. But it's I know I've shared this technique with you before. I think it was possibly I know it was a Christmas card, and it was possibly late summer last year when I shared this technique with you. So for those of you who have only recently started watching me, you may not have seen that technique, and it's just one I wanted to remind you of, because sometimes we get stamp sets with foliage and flowers, and we just think that we have to stamp them as is, you know, as bunches of flowers or as foliage. And it's just, if we have a stamp positioning tool or Stamperatus, it's just a really lovely additional technique to get more mileage from your stamp sets. Just do one. I think I'm back to the beginning, but I'm not quite sure. Let's just have a look. Have I stamped in that position previously? I'm going to stamp again anyway. There we go. So there's our first wreath created. Now I'm going to go ahead and do that a second time with a different colour and with the different stamp. I'm just going to pop that there with the different stamp in the set. So I'm actually going to take this plate off entirely and pop it to one side for cleaning later. Just bear with me while I pop a piece of kitchen roll, because I've got a wet stamp on each side. I'm just going to pop a piece of kitchen paper down so I don't get ink all over my catalogue cover. And I'm going to bring in my second plate, because Stamperatus comes with 2 plates. And I'm going to bring in my second piece of white cardstock into that 8cm by 8cm square there in the middle. Pop a magnet down, and this time I'm going to use this foliage and this flower from the set. So exactly the same technique. I'm just going to close up that terracotta tile before I do anything, and let's just swap that colour. Just pop that there. So exactly the same technique. First of all, I'm going to pop my leaf or foliage stamp down, and I'm going to just test that when I turn that one turn it will still fit inside the square. Oops. Let's have a look, and yes, it will, so I'm happy with that. I've got a bit of dirt on that side, so I'm going to flip that over and use my emergency side. Here we go. I'm going to stick with Old Olive for my foliage. Stick with me while we make 2 cards. And here we go, just one turn. So just a reminder, I've used grid sheet that you can buy from the annual catalogue to go with your Stamperatus. And I know that there are other stamp positioning tools out there on the market. I'm not sure, I've not used any of them, so I'm not sure how big their surfaces are and whether our grid sheet would work with them. But let me give you a measurement of how big our surface is. So it's 19cm across the base, so our grid sheet is 18.5. Let me just measure that again. 19cm, so our grid sheet is actually 18.5 centimetres or 7.5 inches square. So if you have an alternative or a different stamping platform, you can measure it and see whether our grid sheet will fit it, because it's a useful item, useful product to have. And you can very easily then make yourself a stamping square like this for doing this technique. Because you'll have the grids as a guide. And one of the reasons I decided not to do, when I made this template, not to do another square over the top in a diamond shape was, firstly, it was additional work, and who needs additional work even when it's stamping? But secondly, to the eye, I found it much easier just to have one square, and having the two lines that cross mean that you can always line it up properly, and it felt easier. So I've tested out both methods, and it just felt easier doing it this way. I've gone all the way around, but I can never decide whether I need to do another one there. No, I don't need to do another one there. We're done. So that's my second foliage wreath. I'm just going to do my second flower wreath now. So again, I'm going to just take out the plate, turn it around and put it back in. So you have to have the plates absolutely perpendicular. That's a big word for a Tuesday. I want everybody to write it down, please, so you can remember it. So you have to have the plate perpendicular to take it out of the hinge, because the opening is here. The other reason I absolutely love the fact that the plates are removable completely is for storage, because you can actually store your plates one flat and out of the Stamperatus and one in the hinge and folded down, so it makes storage really easy. That's another feature that I really like. Now I'm going to get my second flower, and again I'm going to just roughly line that up. I can see this little hole here for one flower, and I'm just thinking that that's the most likely line up. There we go. And this time I'm going to stamp with Rococo Rose, another of our very well loved but will be retiring this year from the annual catalogue in colour. And I can't remember who it was that mentioned in colours to me the other day, that said, well, if it's an in colour, why is it going? And it's just what we do every year. Stampin' Up brings in one new set of in colours, so we always have two sets of in colours in every annual catalogue, and they're a family of 5 colours, and they're based on the latest trends. And we have a new set of in colours every year and one set that goes out, so each set of in colours lasts for 2 years. And this year it's the turn of this set that includes Rococo Rose and Terracotta Tile, and the other colours in that family are Pretty Peacock, yes, I can't remember the others. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to look in my catalogue now, in the colour families. What's the blue one called? I bet you're all writing frantically, typing the answers. Colour collections, here we go. So when we look at the colour collections, here we go. Seaside Spray and Purple Posy. So these colours are going to retire at the end of this catalogue, which is the end of April, actually, the beginning of, let me have a look, 3rd of May. So on the 2nd of May this catalogue will retire and new products will come in. We've got a very strange year this year with our catalogue alignment, because our annual catalogue this time, this current annual catalogue, was current for 11 months only. It was launched in June last year and will be finishing at the end of April, beginning of May this year. And yet our mini catalogue, January to June, will actually continue right till the end of June. So there we are, we're back to the beginning, and I'm just going to double check whether I've actually got, yes, I did have one stamped there. So we've gone all the way around. Now you could choose now with these wreaths, with these small flowers, you could choose whether to actually bring in the other flower set. So we could actually bring that in. Let's just take that one out. And you could choose whether to stamp the other flowers over the top, so you could actually, even though it wasn't designed to coordinate with this foliage, it was designed to coordinate with the other one, you could actually stamp it on top and have more flowers, a more flowery effect. But I'm going to stick with that for the moment, and I'm going to finish these two cards off. I'm just going to remove that inky plate so I don't get ink everywhere, and just pop my Stamperatus to one side as well. And I'm going to finish these two cards off by layering them up with their respective cardstock, and look how pretty they look once you layer them up. It just brings that colour alive, and I'm going to pop them on those card blanks. But before I do that, I'm going to, if I bring my originals back in, I'm going to tie some coordinating ribbon. Now the coordinating ribbon for these in colours is slightly wider, but I'm going to do exactly the same technique and do that double knot for the middle. And I'm going to show you a technique that, if you followed my live last week and hopped over to my friend Alison's live, you'll see her demonstrate exactly this technique. So instead of my ribbon going all the way round, I know this colour doesn't match, but instead of my ribbon going all the way around and then me fumbling to tie a double knot, I'm going to actually tie my ribbon around a cylindrical object, and I've just chosen dangerously my water pot here. So I'm going to, because I'm right-handed, I'm going to start with my ribbon on the spool, and I'm going to go left over right and right over left. So I'm just going to tie that round my water jar, and then just tie that again. I'm all scrunched up, and I'm hoping this is coming out all right on camera. Am I still in shot? Maybe a little bit further back. And let's just get my ribbon all the right way around. Perhaps not very easy to see on camera with a water jar, but when I slide that off, the reason I've chosen my water jar is because it's slightly tapered towards the top, and it makes sliding it up quite nice and easy. So when I've slid that up, I've got that nice knot that I can pull nice and tight, and now I can trim. I use my fabric scissors to just trim that off. And if you're very good at that, you shouldn't need to trim any. Let's just do that on the opposite angle. Oh, fumble fingers this morning, or this afternoon. So now I've got a piece like this that's in a loop. Now the trick is, I actually want my knot to be slightly at one side. Do I? Or do I want it to be right in the middle? No, I actually want it to be right in the middle for this card. So I'm actually going to pop that down and just check I've got enough, and I'm going to actually pull it with my scissors and chop it there. So now I've got my ribbon that I can tuck underneath my card. If I'd have used a smaller jar, that actually goes all the way around. If I'd have used a smaller jar, I could have actually used less ribbon and just tucked it underneath. my jar was quite handy, so I could have used something. I think in actual fact I may have used a Tombow tube when I did my originals, these originals. But yeah, if you use something a bit smaller, you use less ribbon. So I'm actually going to stick those together. I'm going to do a second one using terracotta tile. And let's just have a look. Would a Tombow give me enough ribbon? If I chop that, perhaps just enough, but I'm not going to risk it. Let's stick with the tapered jar. So again, I'm going to go around my jar. I'm going to go, I'm thinking too much, left over right, right over left. I'm actually thinking way too much now. When you just tie your knots, when you're off camera, you just tie them, you just don't even think. And when you're saying it out loud and you're trying to demonstrate, I'm now trying to be clever, and I don't think I've left myself enough ribbon. It's only ribbon. What does it matter if you chop a bit off at the end? And I have to say that this ribbon is quite a bit chunkier than this ribbon, so it just does take a little bit, and that's not anywhere near as neat a knot as I would like. So let's go again with that, because that's rubbish. As always happens when you're live. Let's start again. That's a bit better. I'm hoping it's a bit better anyway. The first one tied really well. Oh no, that's awful. Are you still watching? Are you still there? Have you abandoned me? I think I'm just overthinking what I'm actually doing because I'm trying to say it out loud and it's not happening. Oh, do you ever wish you could just stop the camera, go and do it off camera and then come back and it'd be perfect? And I did about 4 of these yesterday. Well, that's not perfect, but I'm going to stick with it because I don't want to send you to sleep. And I also don't want to knock my jar of water over. Let's just trim that off. There we go. And we can, as always, just give that a really nice pull. I'm not happy with the knot in the middle, but I am happy that the tails are laying nice and even and straight across rather than up and down. I'm just going to trim that so we can wrap that round. Okay, let me just see if I've got any comments coming up. Oh, bless you, Sylvia. It makes you feel better when I struggle. Of course, absolutely. We're all just, you know, I'm a demonstrator, but I'm not an absolute expert in everything, and I'm just a person at the end of the day. So that's one knot that's really nice and neat. Do you see how flat it is on top? Lovely. And this is my second naughty knot, and it's not gone flat on top, but what I'm happy about is the fact that the tails are laying straight and they're not laying diagonal. So I'm happy to stick it on the card. At the end of the day, it's handcrafted. So let's get on and assemble these cards. Let's just pop my originals there and let's stick these together, and then I'll show you how I did this cute sentiment. So really it couldn't be easier to actually assemble. As always, I'm going to use my favourite glue, which is the liquid glue, and a bead around the edge and a squiggle in the middle, and just mat and layer that piece. So I said my white layer that I've done my stamping on was 8 centimeters by 8 centimeters, and my coloured layer was 8.5 centimeters by 8.5 centimeters. And my before I talk too much, and stick this down, I need to stick my ribbon across. So let me just rescue myself. I'm just going to reach for my glue sponge. You know, I always have a sponge that I use for gluing, and I'm just going to sponge as much of that off as I can, because what I am going to do to stick my ribbon down is use a tape glue just along that edge and just along that edge. That's me talking too much, I'm not concentrating. So I now have a tape glue down each edge, and I can just wrap my ribbon around carefully. And now I can go ahead and I can either continue to use tape, or I can use my Tombow multi-purpose, and it doesn't matter that you mix and match your glues, you can use whatever you want. And checking that my card's opening this way and sticking that to my card base. So that's one ready for a sentiment. Let's go ahead and do the second. I'm really happy with that colour choice that I've gone with the terracotta tile, because this is a colour that I've not used a great deal while it's been an in colour. And I'm not quite sure why I'm not attracted to it. I'm not a massive fan of orange or yellow shades usually, but this colour, now I've got it out, and I knew I'd put too much glue on there. I'm just going to give that edge a wipe just to dry it, and then I can come back with my glue rubber and remove any excess. That's because I store my glue with the nozzle down, and I use one of these little plastic boxes to store my glue in. The other thing you can use is the top off a washing detergent bottle is what I use in classes, but on my own craft desk I just have these little boxes, and because I always store my glue nozzle down, sometimes it does come out really fast, and sometimes when it's getting near to emptying it doesn't. So let's have some tape glue, stamp and seal, which always springs back. There we go. Down each edge. So there's a tip for you with regard to storing your glue, having it always ready. Now I've got my ribbon. There we are. Yes, I'm really happy that I've chosen these to have. I always loved Rococo Rose. I think that's just such a gorgeous dusky rose colour, and it's been very popular just lately in the last month or so. The cardstock's been on back order twice, and I think it's currently back in stock. Goodness me, I need a new clean corner of my glue rubber. Get those bits off. There we are. So 2 cards ready for sentiments. Now, when I trimmed down my white pieces, I took 2 pieces of white scrap and I've cut them down to 2 centimetres, and I'm going to use one of my favourite label punches, and I'm going to pick one of the sentiments from the set, and I'm going to use I think I'm going to use Thank You. Actually, I've used My Sweet Friend for the originals, and I think I'm going to use Thank You. I can never have enough thank you cards personally, because I like to say thank you every time somebody places an order with me. I like to send an individual hand stamped card, and if your order is over £25, you will also receive a free gift from me. So I'm actually stamping these Again, the beauty of photopolymer stamps is that you can see straight through, and I can position them exactly where I want the sentiment to be. And with this punch, I find it useful to turn it over this way to see exactly where the card is. So we slide it in the groove up to the end, then I can see exactly where, because if this end is not straight, what happens sometimes is you get a slightly off centre. So I've just lined that up, and what I'm looking at, let me just find something to point with. What I'm looking at is that this edge lines up with this shoulder, and I've got it nice and even, and I can go ahead and punch that end. And now what I'm going to do is snip some of the length off, and I'm going to do exactly the same. So I'm going to feed that in, and because it's a really tiny piece, I'm going to use the post-it sticker trick because it's going to get lost. So on the end that I'm not punching, I'm just adding a little post-it sticker. It could be a large post-it sticker, and just to prove that I will use it on the second one. And I'm going to slide that in. Now I've got something to keep hold of. So I've got something at this end to keep hold of, and I can move that so it's in the right position, and I can just punch that end. There we go. Oh, slightly too long on that end, but not to worry. So there's one. And actually what I'm going to do now is trim that. I'm going to trim that so I've got equal either side. So I will need a post-it sticker. And I'm just going to grab a larger post-it sticker, which I know I've got here on my desk, just to prove that they will actually slide all the way in. So here's a broader post-it sticker. And because there's a slot that runs all the way across, that post-it sticker will actually go in all the way. So if you find it easier to hold on to a bigger one, or you just simply don't have any of these skinny page marker post-it stickers, I'm going to do exactly the same. I do love this punch. I use it quite a lot on those small sentiments that we have. There we go. There we go, we can see that sliding through. And sometimes you just want to grab a small punch and not use a die for your sentiments, and I find that this just fits the bill for lots of those smaller sentiments, because you can actually punch full width or 3 different sizes and 2 different pattern ends, and I'm hoping that's coming across on camera. That's a really handy punch to have. So I'm just going to finish those off by using a dimensional, just one dimensional on the back. And just a tip here for, I suppose it's a design tip really. I could stick my sentiment down here in the corner, up here in the top corner, right in the middle. I'm choosing to be over one side, and I'm choosing to touch the ribbon, just to slightly overlap the ribbon. And that's a design tip. And I'm now looking at that and thinking that's completely not central, but hey, just for the sake of demonstrating, it's stamped and punched. But just as a design tip, when you group elements together rather than having them all laid out miles apart from each other, it just makes things more interesting to the eye, and your eye isn't having to do quite so much work looking around the whole card and trying to find the actual design. So there we go. For quick and easy note cards, I've not been on camera for quite an hour, and some of that was saying hi and introduction, and I've made 2. And yes, I did trim and cut the actual cardstock before I came on, but very, very quick. Bless you, you're all coming on with comments now, that's lovely, thank you. I'm sure you mean set of cards, Sylvia, not wet of cards. We've had enough wet with the rain and the snow over the weekend. It's a really nice way of making a quick and simple note card. Perhaps you're not going to pop it in an envelope. You're going to maybe just pop it in a bag with something, or just pop it with a bunch of flowers or something. Bless you, Sylvia. I'm looking at your comments now. Thank you, Beth. And I just want to, and now I'm standing up and I'm standing back and I'm just looking at both of these. You can see I used the same foliage and same petals for this one as I did for this one, but you can see it's a much tighter wreath on this card than it is on this, and that is simply down to the position that I place the stamps on the plate. So not a design by design, completely by happy accident, but just simply how I actually placed the leaves on the original plate. You can see I've used the same here, just ever so slightly tighter on this one, but exactly the same technique. And I just hope that you will agree that at first glance, looking at this stamp set, you may not have immediately thought, I'm going to stamp a wreath with these 2 elements, these 2 image elements. So getting more for your money when you're buying your stamp sets is always good. And like I say, this evening I'm going to come back on and demonstrate this fancy fold. It's actually called a diorama fold card, and I'm going to show you something really cute and fun that I did once I'd actually finished it. It's a card that will fold flat and go into an envelope and then simply pop up and stand once it's out of the envelope. And as a bonus, I'm going to share with you this card. I may or may not demonstrate the making of this card. I may just talk you through it. We'll just see how much time we have this evening. So I hope you'll come back this evening and join me for part 2 of a welcoming window, and I look forward to having a chat later. Thanks again for joining me just now. I'm going to not swivel you back round. I'm going to say goodbye from this angle. Bye everyone. Thanks for joining.